Good morning, America. How are ya? Monday Morning Rail. Hi, I'm Denny Jelsma, and I'm at the world-famous Jacksonville Terminal Railroad Museum in beautiful Jacksonville, Florida, where the sun always shines. Today is Monday, and we always do Show and Tell. Show and Tell is always brought to you by Jelsma Graphics, the people that make all the embroidered railroad clothing we have for 40 years, since 1985. Go to jelsma.com. That's JELSMA.com. Shop, and you'll enjoy all the different products that we have had. And with all that being said, Show and Tell is going to start right now. Show and Tell starts right now, and as always, we got a very exciting show today. And I'm going to talk about a very, very favorite railroad of mine, and that's the Wabash and then the Union Pacific. You know, the Union Pacific and the Wabash got together, and they ran a train called the City of St. Louis. Very famous train. Went from St. Louis all the way to Los Angeles, and we're going to talk about the dome liner City of St. Louis. You know, a lot of people ask me, say, hey, how come you know so much about passenger trains? Well, I don't think I know that much, but I belong to a lot of historical societies, and I read a lot of books. And so you've heard me on here talk about that you need to join one of your historical societies of your favorite railroad. Now, for an example, I belong to the Wabash Historical Society. There's about 300 members, and you got to remember the Wabash kind of went out of existence in I think it was 64 or 5, so 64 probably. But anyhow, the Wabash Historical Society is thriving. They've gained members, and so I hope that I help with a little bit of that. But what I'm getting at is that you need to join these historical societies, and they give you all kinds of information. And I belong to the Union Pacific Historical Society. I belong to the CB&Q. The CB&Q has got just a beautiful bulletin that they put out, and all kinds of information. I wanted to know some information about a particular passenger car, and I was at a show, and the CB&Q guys were there, and the president was there, and everybody else, and the first thing they see me, they say, hey, pay your dues. And I forgot to pay my dues. So these guys are really, and all of the societies, they're very, very friendly, and they help you. And I say, hey, I need this and this. Bam. When I got home, that information was in my mail. And so it's very important that if you like your particular favorite railroad, you join that historical society. They're $30 or $35, or different historical societies have different fees, and you get usually 4 magazines, or booklets, all kinds of information. And the guys that belong to these are really dedicated to preserving the history, and that's the whole thing. I belong to the Florida East Coast, and I run the company store, and people are constantly ordering stuff about the FEC from all over the United States, and that always kind of amazes me. And so there's just a lot of historical societies with a lot of information. So go out there and join these societies. For an example, I got a call from one of the guys on the Wabash last night, and I told him, I said, hey, watch Monday, because we're going to do the City of St. Louis. And man, he tells me all kinds of stuff I didn't even know about the City of St. Louis, and it was very interesting information. And so we're going to talk about a train called the City of St. Louis. St. Louis was a rail hub, actually the second largest rail hub in America, next to Chicago. Naturally, New York City in the Northeast had, heavy presence for railroading, but in the United States, if you just took 2 hubs, it was Chicago and St. Louis. And just like today, if you fly anywhere, you got to fly through Atlanta. Well, back then you rode a train, you went through Chicago, you went through St. Louis. And so the city of St. Louis was inaugurated, I believe, in 1948. And so a lot of the cars that made up was made by the American Car and Foundry out of St. Louis, and Union Pacific bought a lot of their cars, and there was a joint venture between the Union Pacific and the Wabash. Now, I have an 18-car train for the city of St. Louis, and one of the things I want to talk about is that most of the time, us modelers like to model publicity trains, and what I mean is that it's pure, all Union Pacific, or all Wabash, or all Burlington. And so, for the photograph, for the publicity, for the brochures they put out, yes, they wanted to have that. But in reality, they changed equipment back and forth, especially when they had a partner like the Union Pacific and Wabash. The Wabash ran the train from St. Louis through Mexico, Moberly, Missouri, then to Kansas City. And then at Kansas City, they handed it over to the Union Pacific. And there was a lot of different operational scheduling down through the years through the different railroads. So you saw a lot of different combinations. For an example, on my model that I have here, I have UP power going into St. Louis. That's how it started. I learned last night from my friend that told me that about 2 years after they started, like in 1951, they had an agreement with the unions. They didn't want to run UP power to St. Louis, so they cut it off. And so then a little later on, they went back having run through, and you would see Wabash out even in the west of Denver, as far west as Denver. Now, let's just take a look at this train. They advertised this when it came out in the 50s as the Dome Liner City of St. Louis, and it was really one of the premier trains of Union Pacific, and naturally their partner was the Wabash. But the Union Pacific had the city of Los Angeles, the city of San Francisco, the city of St. Louis, and the city of Portland. Those were their really named trains, and naturally, if you're from St. Louis, you're going to say the St. Louis train was the best. If you were from San Francisco, you're going to say San Francisco. But anyhow, what we have here is we've got an E7, which was very typical for the Wabash. We have an E8, and we have an RPO I threw in there. Typically, this would have been taken off at Kansas City. We've got some head-in equipment here. These are Bud cars. You saw these two cars constantly on the city of Kansas City of the Wabash. American Car. We have a Wabash baggage, Union Pacific. We have a Bud dormitory car, and you say, "Oh, what's a dormitory car?" That's where the crew slept. And on big trains, they had to have a place for the crew to sleep, and they would modify a car, and they called dormitory. Then we had coaches, and this train was very well patronized because people rode the coach for all different places. For an example, you got on St. Louis, said, hey, if you wanted to go to Moberly, Missouri, you had two basic trains that you could take, the city of Kansas City or the city of St. Louis, and you could get a ticket on that, or the Kansas City or Topeka, Kansas. So it was a lot of coaches. And then you got to remember this was a 2-day trip from St. Louis to LA, and it was about 2,400 miles. And they wanted to have their passengers feel very comfortable. They had lounge cars, they had dining cars, and as you could see, some of the cars said Union Pacific. This here says Wabash on it. That's a Wabash car. And here we have a lounge car. And what I like to do, I like to finish off my passenger cars. I put shades. I like to put people in it. And so we, and also I threw in a blue night Wabash sleeping car, which you saw this in the 60s a lot on this train. And then the observation. Now, this train added domes in Kansas City to go west. The Union Pacific usually put 2, sometimes 3, depending upon the patronation. But they usually ran the observation. And I want you to look, number 2, if you can zoom in, and on the very end, it says the city of St. Louis, and it lit up, and it was really a great drumhead. And the car that I have there is a Walters. It's lighted. It's really a nice car. And the city of St. Louis was a very luxurious train, and very well patronized. It made like 38 stops. It was amazing how fast the train, averaged 40-some miles an hour. And so out in the plains of Kansas, and then especially in Wyoming, it was very common this train hit 90 to 100 miles an hour.
Well, thank you, Denny. That's really interesting. Looking through the paperwork that you have, I picked this up from the June 1st, 1957 schedule. A note from the Union Pacific, which I thought was pretty interesting, which says passengers with tickets routed via Union Pacific between Omaha, Kansas City, or St. Joe, Missouri, Leavenworth, Kansas, and Daggett, California, or beyond, also via Union Pacific between Huntington, Oregon, and Daggett, California, or beyond, are entitled to a free, I said free in Las Vegas, free side trip to the Hoover Dam and Lake Mead and return. So it says Daggett is the station 9 miles east of Barstow, California.
That's kind of neat.
But yeah, so that's just a little tidbit, a little extra you could get from riding this train.
And once again, there's a website that's called Streamline Schedules. And you just go on the internet, and it's called Streamline Schedules, and it has these particular schedules. It tells you the time. And for an example, this train made 38 stops. It took 47 hours and 45 minutes, and its average speed was 48.7 miles an hour. Eastbound was 49 miles, almost 50. And you think about that with that many stops, and some of them they had to switch refuel, a half-hour stop sometimes. And so that train was really hauling through the desert, and especially from Salt Lake down to L.A. It really, really hauled. And so the Domeliner city of St. Louis, the Wabash and the Union Pacific, what a beautiful train. And once again, that's the way it is on the Wabash and the Union Pacific, and at the world-famous Jacksonville Terminal Railroad Museum in beautiful Jacksonville, Florida, where the sun always shines and running trains is an absolute pleasure.